Welcome to Friday Night Live. Do me a huge favor right now. Can you press the share if you're on Facebook? Press the share button right now. Thank you so much. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our station right now, to our channel. We want everyone to be a part of this exciting show. We thank you for your support. Let's go into our service and let's enjoy the show.
Come on and sing with me. There's a praise in this house. Everybody dance before him. There's a praise in this house. I can feel it now. Come on, you say it. There's a praise in everybody. Everybody dance before him. There's a praise in I can feel him now. I can feel him now. Come on, say he's high. He's high and lifted up. His praise. Say he reigns upon the throne. He's God and God alone. Oh, say he's high and lifted up. His train fills the temple. Oh, he reigns upon the throne. He's God and God alone. Come on, sing with me again. Say, there's a worship in everybody. Come on, right where you are. There's a worship. I can feel him now. Yeah, there's a worship in everybody. Come on and bow. Say there's a worship. I can feel it now. Come on, say he's high and lifted. His train fills the temple. Oh, he's God and God alone. Come on, one more time, say it. He's high and lifted. He reigns fills the temple. Oh, he reigns upon the throne. He's God and take God alone. Take it up, y'all. One more time, say he's high and lifted. His reigns fills the temple. Say he reigns upon the throne. He's God and God alone. Put your hands together. I don't care where you are. You stop right now. You get this praise in. Because God is worthy of all of these praises. So we're going to sing it right now. Say praise him. Praise him. Lift those hands. Lift those hands and praise him. Say praise him. Praise him. God is here. God is here. Come on, right where you are. Say praise him. Praise him. Those hands and praise him. Say praise him. Praise him. God is here. God is here. Yeah, say he's Jehovah. Jehovah. Jireh. My provider. Jehovah. Sing. God. He's with me. Say he's Jehovah. Jireh. He's my provider. Jehovah. Sing. God. He's with me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second session of our presentation on the COVID vaccine and COVID-19. I'm sorry I'm not able to hear the host. I'm not sure if there's an issue, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to do the presentation. For those of you who didn't join us last week, I'm Dr. Grace Levy-Clark, and in addition to being an ophthalmologist, I'm also an ocular immunologist. And an immunologist is someone who deals with understanding how various types of organisms, foreign and in the body, can affect the immune system and ultimately can cause diseases in the body. Tonight, we're going to talk about a number of aspects. It's going to be a potpourri. First, I'm going to talk about health disparities and the COVID-19. Then, I'm going to go into the vaccine. Before I talk about the vaccine, specifically this week, we're going to talk about the Pfizer vaccine. But before I do that, I'm going to outline the CDC recommendations for preventing development of the COVID-19 disease. In order to talk about health disparities, I'm going to give you a brief overview first before we look at it specifically in the context of the COVID-19 disease. What is a health disparity? So health disparity is when there's a difference in the way that some patients are treated in comparison to other patients. And if we look at the studies that have been done, health disparity can be caused by a number of different issues. But the ones I want to point out are race or ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, geography, age, and disability. And when we look at disparities in the way patients are treated in the health system, the groups that are at the greatest risk include minorities, and minorities as defined by the Census Bureau in alphabetical order include African Americans or Blacks, Asians, specifically Filipino, Hmong, and Vietnamese, Hispanics or Latinx, Native Americans or Alaskan Natives, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders. In addition to these minority groups, people of low income are also considered one of the groups at risk. And just so you can get a context, a low income would be considered a family of four with less than that's earning less than $30,000 annually combined. And finally, the other group that are considered at risk for health disparities would be women. In order to understand these disparities, we need to know that there are certain things that are referred to as health determinants. So these are things that will determine how well you're going to navigate the health system to maintain your health or to improve your health. And one of the determinants is the high quality of education. And I underline education because here I'm not referring to the diploma or the degree that you have in hand, but really how you understand your disease. Do you know what it is? Do you know what some of the effects can be? Do you know how it is treated? And do you know some of the ways that you can improve your outcome? The type of nutrition that you follow, having safe housing, affordable, reliable transportation so you can get to your health appointments, and then culturally sensitive healthcare providers. And I think that's really important. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is health insurance. And then, in some instances, the availability of clean water and non-polluted air. So education, understanding your disease, culturally sensitive healthcare providers, and having health insurance so you can access healthcare. If we look at what did the pandemic do, or what we can learn from the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a recent survey that was published by Commonwealth Fund, which is a large nonprofit organization. And what they found was that as a result of the pandemic, 50% of the African Americans and Latinos that were surveyed said due to the pandemic, they were having economic challenges. When they looked at mental health issues, they found that 39% of females across all ethnic groups versus 26% of males said that they were having mental health challenges. When they looked at mental health challenges among economic groups, there was a 20% higher mental health challenges among low income, among those who were in the low income bracket. And finally, mental health due to the pandemic across all races, there was a 10% higher among African Americans and Latinos versus non-Hispanic whites. If we look at the overall mortality, that is death due to COVID-19, here we see, again, unfortunately, African Americans are topping the list. If you look at the demographics of the United States, African Americans or Blacks make up about 13%, while Hispanics make up about 18%, and white non-Hispanics would be about 60%. So the number of white non-Hispanics would be almost 5 times the number of African Americans in the population. Yet the latest statistic shows that nationwide, African Americans are dying 1.4 times greater, at a greater rate than the white population due to the COVID-19 disease. So what do we need to do? We need to understand what the preventative measures are and follow the CDC guideline. Stay at least 6 feet away from others when you are in public. Cover your mouth and your nose with a mask when you are around others. Wash your hands often with soap and water. And if soap and water are not available, use a hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Avoid crowded indoor spaces and ensure that these spaces, if you have to be indoors, it should be properly ventilated, and if possible, open the windows and bring in some outdoor air. If you're feeling sick, stay at home and isolate from others. And routinely clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces, and do everything you can to decrease infection spread around the house. And last but by no means least, get vaccinated. What should you do if you develop symptoms? And we went through some of the symptoms last week. If it's possible, you should get tested. If you're able to, self-isolate. That is, stay away from public places, and the best advice is to stay home. At home, stay away from other family members, so isolate within your house. Wear a face mask and let others who are interacting with you wear a face mask also. And then follow all of the additional CDC guidelines. Wash your hands often. Cover if you have to cough or sneeze. And clean and disinfect frequently and thoroughly. If you're at home and you're sick, when should you seek emergency care? If you develop trouble breathing, if you have a persistent pain or pressure in your chest, if you have any mental confusion, or if you feel just very sleepy and you can't stay awake, and depending on your skin tone, if you begin to look pale or gray, these are just some of the symptoms. If you're concerned about any other symptoms, you should check with your medical provider. And if you believe it's an emergency, please call 911. And if you have been tested and you are positive, notify the operator that you have COVID-19, or if you suspect it, let them know that the symptoms indicate that. Just a brief word about testing. There are two types of tests that you can get: a diagnostic test and an antibody test. If you want to know if you have the disease today, then you should get a diagnostic test. Because if you get an antibody test, what you should note is that if you get infected, it can take several days. And depending on your immune status, it could take even weeks for you to develop the antibodies. Because the antibodies is your immune response to the virus. And so if you want to know if you are positive today, now, you should do a diagnostic test. Now, a word about the vaccination. Tonight, we're highlighting the Pfizer vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine requires 2 doses, one on the first day and the second dose 21 days later. The Food and Drug Administration authorized an emergency use of the Pfizer vaccine on December 11th in 2020. And note that the letter says the known and potential benefits outweigh the potential risks. It is authorized for patients who are 16 years of age and older. It is not to be given to pregnant women or nursing mothers. But if you're planning to become pregnant, you can take the vaccine. In the future, if you're planning to become pregnant in the future, you can take the vaccine now. Last week, I told you that the virus has special spike proteins that are on the outer surface. And these proteins will attach to the surface of the cell, then penetrate the cell. Once they're inside the cell, then the virus begins to replicate until it kills the cell. How does the vaccine work? The vaccine is actually an encoded protein, and we call this protein a messenger RNA. And it is encoding it is carrying the genetic code for the spike protein that we just talked about. When it enters the body, it will mimic the presence of the virus, and so your body will begin to produce neutralizing antibodies. It is a very specific response, meaning that when you get the vaccine, the only antibodies that this vaccine should stimulate your body to produce will be the antibodies to the spike protein. During the testing of the vaccine, it was found that 12 days after the first dose, they were able to see early protection, and 7 days after the second dose. Overall, with the Pfizer vaccine, you'll get a 95% efficacy. So understand that the purpose of the vaccine is to get you ready in case you come in contact with the virus or you contract the virus. It does not prevent contraction of the virus. It mitigates or it minimizes the response in the body by getting you ready with these antibodies so that you will not have severe disease or you will not succumb or become fatally infected. So the purpose of the vaccine is not to prevent the disease, but to minimize the symptoms that you're going to have and prevent severe illness requiring ventilation or mortality. Many people are concerned that the vaccine was developed so quickly. What you should know is that the vaccine went through the typical phases of development, and development of the vaccine began very early in the process, December to January. The number of patients that were recruited or the volunteers, participants, would have been less than a typical vaccine production, but all of the phases in the development were carried out. Now that the vaccine has been circulating in the US, if we look at Florida, we see that the data that came out at the end of February shows that of all of the patients or the part of the population that had received the vaccine, 60% of those who had completed both series were Caucasians or white. Only a very small percentage of those who have completed the series were other minority groups. So what this means is we need to understand that the best protection we have against this disease is taking all of the precautions set out by the CDC, which includes getting vaccinated. So remember, get vaccinated. Thank you.
Good evening, Friday Night Live family. This is another edition of Flex with Lex. So for this week's Flex with Lex challenge, we are going to jump rope. We're going to jump rope. Now, I have a rope, but I don't know if you have a rope. So we're going to act like we all have a rope. I have a rope, you have a rope, all of God's children have ropes. Okay, so we're going to jump rope. So I just need you to just act like you're jumping rope, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. That's simple. If you want to get razzle dazzle with it, you want to go a little faster, a little higher, or you can even hold something in your hand. For those of you who might not be able to jump, probably got knee problems, back problems, you might just want to do it a little slower. Just alternate raising your legs. That's simple. Just alternate leg raises. Remember, 100 a day for the week. 100 a day for the week. See you next time on Flex with Lex.
It's trivia time. And listen, this month, since it's our anniversary, I figured let's ask questions that you should already know. That's right. All you have to do to participate is go down to the description box, click on the link, answer the questions 100% correctly, and your name will be entered into a raffle to win a prize. It's just that simple, guys. Let's see what you can remember. Well, that's about it, guys. 5 questions, 1 winner. See you next week.
Friday Night Live, 1 year.
It's been 1 year.
1 whole year, guys.
It's been 1 year.
It's been 1 year, guys.
1 year.
It's been 1 year since we've been on the air, learning, laughing, and growing together as a Friday Night Live family.
Oh my God!
Wow! Woo-hoo! And listen, this month, we want to recognize all of our extended family who's been tuning in week after week, commenting on the comment box, participating in the trivia, and especially those of you who's been doing that Flex with Lex challenge. Come on, somebody. This month, we want to feature your shout-out. That's right. Yeah, we want to feature your shout-outs. And listen, all you have to do to participate is just create a 1-minute video, click on the link below, and just submit it. It's just that simple. Again, all you have to do to participate is create a 1-minute shout-out video, click on the link, and just submit it. See you soon.
Happy Sabbath to everyone and welcome to Friday Night Live. It is the Sabbath. We made it to another awesome week and we're ready for an experience with God. I hope you had a progressive and a successful work week and family and friends and just accomplishing your goals throughout this week. And now it's time for you to rest and to become a part of this global worship experience. It's just good to know that we have a huge family. Every Friday evening, we come together from all around the world for a night of conversations. There's just conversing, a night of conversations and conversing about the goodness of the Lord and focusing on real important topics that it's very progressive for those of us who are part of the regional conference. And this evening, have my suit on, as you can see. I'm prepared for the moment. I'm prepared because we have greatness in the studio. We have probably one of the most progressive thinkers and leaders of the Black work, and I dare say that with so much respect for our guest this evening. He served recently as one of the vice presidents of the North American Division. He is considered one of the best presidents we have had to grace that position there in Allegheny East, where he was a forerunner in the progress and in shaping that conference. And he is truly just an awesome person. I haven't had much opportunities to be around him, but just the few interactions I've had, he is definitely a man of business, a man that means excellence is the call that he wants everyone to know is his calling card. And I can hear that in just preparing for this encounter with Friday Night Live. He was very, very dutiful about making sure the task on his end was done. And for that, I say to God be the glory. I want to bring to the stage at this time the one and only Pastor Alvin Kibble of the North American Division, our former vice president. Bring the good Doc to the stage at this time. Well, Doc, I want you to know everything I said, okay? you have really made an impression on me. I'm telling Dean that you were strict about making sure this was done correctly. And to that end, I said I can imagine when you were leading, just the type of interaction you had with me. I can imagine when you were in your stride, just moving the conference and other divisions, you were about that business. So I want to say, God be the glory, and welcome to Friday Night Live.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be with you.
Awesome. Now, you do have a presentation that you would like to share with us, and if our family would give us a second, I'm going to ask our tech director, who's I think it's one of is Noel. If we can sort of walk through this, because we do want to see what you have for us in that in the presentation. Noel, if possible, can we walk the good elder and how to share his screen with us, if possible? And I know this is a little bit outside of the norm for us, but I do want the elder to share information with our family this evening. So, Elder, I'm gonna just give way for a second. If we can just remove the elder, and we're gonna call the elder, and we're gonna walk you through, Elder, how to get your screen up. That's okay with you?
That's fine.
Awesome. So, no, awesome. So while they're doing that, we're gonna ask for the panelists to come on in. Friday Night Live crew, come on in, because we want to receive all of this man of God. I don't want to shortchange anyone. I want it all. Okay.
Hey, I just want to know, did you and Cherie just come from the same church?
No.
What?
Eddie, I came from holiness. Eddie, I came from holiness church.
Eddie, I want you to know that our fearless leader is not loyal, because he's sitting up here casket sharp, and some of us rushed to put on a good sweater tonight. Like what in the world?
Ain't even babe or nothing. Just
Oh Lord. Okay.
Like,
the Lord is not pleased.
I just want to say again to all of
greasy. Like, what is going on?
all of
And he's sitting up here as sharp as a tack.
Yeah, you're supposed to have your bath before sunset.
Listen. For all of you who are watching us right now, who have not been a part of this
I will
conversation,
answer you tomorrow when the sun sets.
listen. We don't condone none of this. We don't condone none of these conversations. Hey man, everybody, man, why don't we just go ahead and say hi to the people right now? J-Ro, man, go ahead, talk to the people.
Yay! Happy Sabbath, everybody. How many of us recognize that the time of trouble is upon us? We're talking about Flex with Lex. So if y'all, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to live, it's time to don't go back to the house and get your jacket. If you're on the rooftop, just leave, because Flex with Lex is going to take you to the time of trouble. It's the truth. Almost had a heart attack this week.
I didn't know that J-Ro had that in him.
Mercy.
Pastor Lewis.
It's always good to be with you guys. Right now, the tech department is working with Pastor Kibble on his end to share with us his presentation. So we want to make sure we have the full experience of this man of God, and I do not want to shortchange him or the information he will render this evening to us. So while we're waiting, and they're not too long. All right, so let me say this, Eddie. I had the privilege of doing a revival / crusade, should I say evangelistic effort in the Cayman Islands. That's right. I mean, every night from this studio, I preached the gospel to the area churches throughout the island, and it's been a great experience. I want you to know that even through a virtual background and a virtual format and platform, guess what? We have baptism tomorrow.
Amen.
We have baptism. Can I get an amen from out there inside of the sanctuary? That's why I told Cherie I went to Holiness Church. So
you all hear that? Is it just me? Y'all hear that?
It's a little echo, but we're coming now. Let me promote our women ministry department is now a part of our Friday night family. Welcome to the neighborhood, Mithra, and all of your Southeastern Conference women. We're so happy, mothers and daughters and wives. We're so happy to have you guys with us. So she's part of the neighborhood, so we're gonna make room for her. All right. While we're waiting, let's talk a little bit about Flex and her invisible rope, like Wonder Woman.
Can we first talk about this whole stance like this? Can we talk about this real quick?
If you're doing it like that, you're doing it wrong. See, that's the problem with y'all.
I actually like the challenge this week, Lex. I really do. I think it's awesome.
And this is why Jesus has not returned yet. This is what is delaying his coming. But don't worry.
Java, do you have a book about why Jesus has delayed his return? If so, let's get it over to Lex's house.
Hey, Dean.
I mean, look, this is what it is. Matter of fact, I'm waiting for her to have, when it's the rainy season, for her to have some rain exercises.
Oh, we can go outside. Don't encourage me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I know that we're kind of delayed. We're kind of delayed a little bit on the presentation. We ended off with J-Ro saluting everybody. Since our pastor, good Java Madison, came in, man, go ahead and say hello to everybody, Java.
Hey, happy Sabbath. I am glad to be in the house of God. You know, this virtual house that the Lord has allowed us to be a part of one more time.
You know something? I want to also make a simple announcement that for the month of April, we're going to ask Lex to take us through a journey. We're going to do a week of prayer and exercising. And we're going to ask her to put Bible. Well, there you go, Elder. You just saved me. So I take that back. Don't worry about that. That week of prayer would not happen. Okay. So
You better act right. You better act right now.
Elder, welcome back, Elder.
Act right.
We're so happy to have you back with us. So, Elder, we're going to turn the floor over to you. Do you want to share your presentation and then we go through the Q&A, or how do you want to do it? We're going to allow you to tell us how we're going to run this program this evening. Elder Kibble.
Maybe his voice got raptured.
You know something? If he should answer you, Elder Kibble, it was Jonathan Rowe. He's on the right-hand side of you. From where you're sitting, it's left. Elder Kibble, can you hear us? I want to make sure I don't receive it. You see what you did, Jay? You see what you
Now
did,
he
Jay?
got raptured.
Welcome back, Doc. Welcome back, Elder.
Thank you so much.
I want you to know your neighbor next door thought very highly of you, so we're so happy you're back with us. How do you want to conduct the interview this evening? Do you want to start with your presentation and then we go through Q&A?
No, we'll start just as you've outlined it.
Oh, Elder, you're awesome, Elder.
That'll be fine.
Well, welcome this evening to Friday Night Live. We're going to jump right in. So, Elder, we want to know, share with us your ministry journey in Adventism or through Adventism.
Well, that's going to be a bit of a challenge for me because we're talking about a half a century. And you're giving me about 5 minutes to cover that. But I'll do my best. I am a third generation Seventh-day Adventist minister. As of November of 2021, this is the first time in over 100 years that a kibble has not been employed actively in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Wow.
Wow. Starting in 1912 and coming up until November of 2021. My grandfather started in the ministry back around 1912. My father came into ministry in 1929. My father and Elder H.D. Singleton were the first two African-American interns in the North American division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
So, Elder, you are a direct, bloodline to one of the two original Adventist families?
Ready to connect.
You're right.
Wow.
My grandfather, Elder William Winston, came into the Adventist message under the preaching of Ellen White. That was at a General Conference spring meeting in 1909 in Tacoma Park, Maryland. So we've been around for a little while.
Yes.
I received my call in 1967, right after the Allegheny East Conference was organized. The very new president, Elder Thompson, extended to me a call and sponsored me at the seminary. Elder William Albert Thompson.
Wow. Question, Elder. And this is not part of the running sheet that we have, but I just want to ask you, have you experienced your family during this time, this historical, embracing of the Advent message? Did anyone ever share with you their struggle with racism in the church at that time?
Well, let me say this as a precursor. because I know I have a lot of Generation Xers that are watching, and I want to set the story right. Racism, whether de facto or not, is nothing new in the Christian church. The question you really want to ask was whether or not there was racism in the Bible, and the answer is absolutely yes. In the Old Testament, you have the Jews, the Jewish leaders who discriminated against women and children. When the Gentiles joined the church, they discriminated against them as well. You know that story about Jesus cleansing the temple?
The simplest definition.
Remember that story about Jesus cleansing the temple?
Yes, sir.
The most celebrated statement that Jesus made out of that entire experience was, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." Why did he say that when he was dealing with simply the act of money changers?
Ready to connect.
He seems like Jesus is going off topic. Would you know that the section of the temple where the priest had opened it up for a marketplace to sell the animals for sacrifice was the part of the temple that had been assigned to the women and children?
Okay, now.
And also to Gentile believers. They felt that it was all right to desecrate their section of the temple. And what Jesus was saying was the whole temple is sacred, not just the section that you write off as being, oh, that's just where the women, children, and Gentiles worship. That's discrimination. But God never instructed them not to allow the women to have as much access in the temple as the men do. That's discrimination. And we would not have the book of 1st and 2nd Kings. There wouldn't have been much to talk about if it wasn't, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. And he did evil as his father did. They weren't talking about the Gentile leaders. They were talking about God's church officers. So was there racism in the Adventist church? The answer is yes. In 1915, Ellen White died. When she died, the Brethren took out of publication our duty to the colored people. Now, you heard about how the Bible was edited during slavery. You know about that, right? That during slavery, that the Christian leaders took out of the Bible anything that would suggest that God made of one blood all nations of. They took out the Exodus story so that the slaves would not read that God freed the slaves.
Wow.
Well, after Ellen White died, we took out our duty to the colored people, the counsel that had been given to Ellen White on how the church, the Seventh-day Adventist church, should relate to racism. They edited, they took it out. It was out of circulation from 1915 until 1962.
Wow.
The General Conference president didn't even know there was such a book. So was there? Yes. Now, during my personal experience, it became more de facto. It was low key, but it was still there. And so I can remember an experience when I was pastoring up in New Jersey. The New Jersey Conference Church in the area had a Christian education program. and they wanted me to serve on the board. And in order to get to one of the board meetings, I brought my wife. And I asked, I knew she couldn't sit in the meeting, but I asked if they could accommodate her while the meeting was going on. And so they agreed to do so. I'm sitting up there in the board meeting, and the board meeting was quite lengthy. So I decided maybe I would excuse myself and check on my wife. Would you know that my wife was sitting in a hallway where there was neither light nor heat?
What?
So I politely excused myself and I didn't go back. I don't think they would have treated another pastor's spouse like that. If they did, shame on them. But I could fast pace that forward. Let's look at when I was at the seminary. Now, this was not de facto racism. This was plain out blatant racism. In February of 1968, the university agreed to have their first Black History Month celebration. 3 of our students, Lavinia Gordon, who had transferred from Southern, Robert Lister, Elder Robert Lister, and Elder Dr. Jonathan Thompson had gone to the new dean, Dean Pryor, and asked if we could not have more Black speakers at the prestigious Pioneer Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church, since that was the church on campus. And since Black History was coming up, they suggested this would be a great time to do it. And Dean Pryor, who had just transferred from Atlantic Union College, agreed. Well, after that Black History Week, that was when the large cross was burned on the baseball field outside of the girls' dormitory. That was when some of our white students intimidated and threatened our girls when they were leaving the library, going back to their dorms. That was blatant racism. When you have guns and you're threatening the female student, the Black female students, that's probably as raw as. Now, I grew up in Chicago. Chicago was in the north. People left the south to go to the north. When I was growing up in the 50s, we didn't go north of the Loop. The Loop is the downtown area. Michigan Avenue went well into the north area of Chicago. The lakefront carried much further than the downtown. I never saw the north side of Chicago until I was a student at seminary. I never went there. Now, Chicago, like Philadelphia, was a town with neighborhoods. You had the Jewish neighborhood, the German neighborhood, the Polish neighborhood, the Irish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood, and you had the South Side. That's where Mr. Obama and Michelle, they were over there in Hyde Park. But we didn't leave our neighborhood. When Martin Luther King came to Chicago, the greatest form of racism he ever experienced was in Cicero, Illinois. That's over there where Midway Airport is today. So I know what racism is about, but in the church, it was more de facto, low-key, more so than something that was blatant. It was blatant racism when Charles Kinney was denied allowing his family to sit in the congregation during his ordination. That was blatant racism. It was blatant racism when they took the publication of Our Duty to the Colored People out of circulation.
Wow.
I say all that to say that the church is not perfect. And if you think you're going to find a perfect church this side of heaven in any denomination, you've got a surprise coming for you. So I don't want young people to think that there's something wrong with the Adventist church. Yes, the church has had its issues, but the church is not perfect. Why? I've been an administrator in the church for over 30 years. I am not perfect. Do you agree that you're not as good as some people think you are?
I agree.
Well, that's like the rest of us. And so the church is not perfect people. It's a perfect faith in terms of our foundation, in terms of what we believe. But all of us are sinners in need of salvation.
Yes,
We
sir.
all have sinned. Not y'all have sinned. We all have sinned. And that includes the leadership and the membership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So don't get me on denigrating the Adventist Church. I'm not going to do that.
Well, we totally agree with that brief history you gave us. That was absolutely awesome. And the names are individuals we are clueless about, but you brought some context to our discussion thus far in regards to just the encounters of racial tension and realizing that, hey, the church is not perfect and we totally agree with you. Only God is perfect in this equation. But I do want to ask you, Elder, how would you describe the progress of the regional work? Do you think this work is still valuable to the mission of the church?
I think I would best describe it by saying amazing. Really amazing. The story of regional conferences is one of the greatest stories in the Adventist church. It's an amazing story, and it is a success story. Let me share my screen for a moment. I was sharing with you a little bit about the history of the church. As most of you know, it was in 1962 that Elder Frank Lawrence Peterson was elected vice president of the General Conference as a result of the work of Brother Milas Martin and Dr. Frank Hale and their cohorts. Understand, this was 1962. That was done in an effort to try to cover up the embarrassment that had been shared by the newspapers that had reported on the racism of the Adventist Church. However, it took 20 years before the first president of an African division was elected. Now, if the brothers and sisters had really come to an understanding of the efficacy of having leaders from every genre, it would not have taken them 20 years if they had been honest about it. But they still were practicing racism by not placing confidence in the fact that people of color can lead their own work. Now, you were talking about the success of regional conferences. In 1883, J.O. Corliss reported to the GC that there were 267 whites and 20 coloreds in the South. That same year, 1883, the first Negro church was started in Edgefield Junction, Tennessee. That church was built at the cost of $300.
Wow.
However, look at the growth of the black work. From 1896, 100 Negroes were reported as being members of the Adventist Church. In 1909, only 1,000 people of color. 1918, 3,500. What happened in 1944? By 1944, it had reached 11,000. Now, it took from 1896 to 1944 to reach 11,000 members. But in 44, the regional conferences were organized. When the regional conferences were organized, it took 10 years to do what it had previously taken almost 50 years. It went from 11,000 to 23,000. In 10 years, it went from 23 to 37,000. From 1960 to 1970, it went almost 50,000 in 10 years. In 1970 to 1980, it did go 50,000. From 1980 to 1990, it went 60,000. And you're asking me about the regional growth. I think it's phenomenal. Look what happened with the tithe. It was reported in 1892 that the black work had 50 cents. By the end of that year, it had reached $50. In 1902, it was $5,000. In 1906, it was $511. That's all the black churches in the church in America. In 1915, it was only $18 million. But that's after the regional conferences were organized. From 1950 to 1977, it went to $40 million. That's a growth of $22 million in 27 years. From 77 to 84, it went to $69 million. That's $29 million from 77 to 84. That's 7 years. From 84 to 2000, it went to $130 million. Are you following me?
I am following you.
So you want to talk about the You want to talk about the growth of regional conferences? I say it's phenomenal.
That's some progress. That is some amazing progress. Wow. Whoa. That, I think for many of our viewers, that information is sort of shocking to know that this conference has really enhanced the world work, the reach of
the regional conferences by 2000 had become the second largest tithe base in the world church. 9 regional conferences returned more tithe than any other division. 9 regional conferences. 9. and you want to talk about the success, it started with 50 cents. Nobody gave the regional conferences anything. That is what they contributed. That was their hard-earned labor in dedication and commitment to the work of God.
So let me ask a question, Elder, and this may be this is not on our running sheet, but how do we address the infrastructure of our conferences? Those are buildings and schools, and they're not necessarily on the same level as our counterparts, and as Elder Joseph McCoy would say, the other side of the Jordan. The other side of the Jordan. How do we address if we are contributing with that amount of tithe? Why is it that our facilities and our infrastructures are not as well maintained, or even as well built?
It's a matter of economics. I did a study about 25 years ago on the income of the average African American male in 1944. And for the most part, the African American male made 50% of what the white male made. You can do your own study. You can go to the same statistical information. And whether it's 1944, when the regional conferences were started, or 1970, it remained the same. So if in 1944, the average African American was making, the average Anglo-American male was making $500, the average African American male was making $250. So the white male turns in his tithe. On $500, he would turn in how much? He turned in $50.
Yep.
The African American male would turn in $25. Am I right or wrong?
Correct.
All right. So then the white male turns in his offering. So he decides he's going to double tithe. So he turns in another $50 for offering. The African American male turns in $12.50. So now that leaves the African American male with he's turned in $25, $35, $37, and he only had $125. So I'm looking for my pen. I'm sorry. So that you can do the math.
Mm-hmm.
So that's $37.50 out of $250.
Only on Friday Night Live.
So now, I don't need to tie you up.
No, we love it. Come on, Elder.
So now the pastor wants to build a church, right? So the pastor goes back and he says, I need everybody to contribute to the church building program. Well, I forgot to tell you, the African American male wanted to put his children in church school. The white male said, okay, I'll set aside a half a tithe and put my children in church school. Back in those days, church school was about $12, $15 a month. So he puts both of his children in church school. And he still has more than the black male had when he started. The black male can't put his children in church school. His wife has to go and get an extra job. So now they want to build a church. And the white male says, well, okay, I'll put in another tithe, which is $50, so we can build the church. The black male said, I don't have any more money. I'm out of money. So from 1944 until really 1970, 1975, 1980, we didn't build any new churches hardly. It was unusual for us to build a new church. We bought fixer-uppers.
Elder Kibble, you are the first presenter to actually speak to this topic.
Now, I'll give you a clear example.
Wow.
1944, Lake Region Conference purchased property up in Cassopolis, Michigan, to build an academy. If you've ever been to the campground, you know that there's a dormitory. They didn't build that for camp meeting. They built that to start an academy, but they did not have enough discretionary income in order to finish it. At that same time, the Michigan Conference had 3 academies.
Wow.
They had 3 boarding academies. They had Grand Lake, they had Cedar Lake, and they had Adelphian, because they had extra discretionary money. Now that's simply an economic situation. In America, Black men made half as much as what right now. Right now, I was on the Oak Ridge University board, and one of our greatest economists works for Harvard University. He said that the wealth disparity is greater now, even with the multi-million-dollar sports people, greater now than it has ever been in the history of America. It's just the distribution of wealth.
Wow. This is probably the first time, if you guys can recall, this is a...
I'm sorry that I didn't have the information all laid out for you.
No.
I can give you a presentation on that.
No,
but
no,
all you have to do is just add up the figures.
No, Elder. What is so enlightening about this moment is that this is a running question that I have asked probably in every interview I have had, because that is a big challenge. It's a major challenge for this generation of believers. One of the complaints you hear from young adults is that we still have a building fund, but yet the building is still not funded completely. And so they seek for better buildings or facilities for their families, and it leaves the resources lacking for us to do anything to improve. But you have given us some real stats this evening that's just...
Well, let me give you an example. When I was attending Shiloh Elementary School, 70008 South Michigan Avenue, that was back in 1952. In 54, in 55, I was in 4th grade. Oh. And they gave us little cardboard boxes to raise money for the new Shiloh church. And we went out in the neighborhood to raise money for the new Shiloh church. And if we raised our goal, they gave us a Bible, a zipper Bible. I still have that Bible in my library.
Wow.
I was in seminary when Shiloh celebrated their grand opening.
Seminary.
I was in seminary.
Wow.
And Shiloh had their grand opening.
Okay.
And Elder Myers was the pastor that finally finished that, because of what I just got finished telling you about the economic disparity.
Yes, sir. Even today, we still have that disparity.
If you go and you read the cornerstones of our churches, the ones that have been built, Most of those churches were built somewhere in the late 70s and onward.
So
Before that, we bought other people's churches and we fixed them up.
Wow. So there is truly a need for a overhaul of a lot of our facilities if we can ever get the economics correct within our conferences. So that might be.
You think about your contemporaries. Our parents sacrificed and returned faithfully to the church. My father and mother had 6 children, and they put us all through church school. My dad, when he was conference president, made $35 a week. 35, that was his salary. 35. And my mother, she did home nursing up until I went into the 5th grade, and at that time she returned to the classroom. But they put us all through church school. The young people today, your contemporaries, make more money than their parents ever made. But the willingness to sacrifice is not the same.
It's the willingness to live a sacrificial life for the church and for God.
I didn't hear your question.
I said, is it a sacrificial lifestyle that we refuse to invest in?
Yeah, that is something that we want to inherit something that we're not willing to help create, and that's just our culture today.
Now you are by far the first of all of our presenters to be so direct with your comment and basically pushing a solution back on us. Basically, you're challenging my contemporaries and I to literally invest back into these buildings, into this infrastructure.
I can't get it to work.
All right, Elder, I think you have given us a challenge this evening that we need to step up and place resources into these buildings. And rather than complaining, do something about it.
And we have the means now. We have the means. And you have your athletes. Some give back, and some don't. But we can celebrate those who are willing to share their wealth.
So let's stay for a second.
I call it the sponge theory.
The sponge.
In most instances, you know how a sponge soaks up water. A sponge doesn't give back until it's totally submerged and it can't hold anymore. Well, that's Black economics. We don't want to give back unless somebody squeezes us. Because we want to absorb. But we have to be willing to give back so that there can be more and so that the base can thrive. We have to be, but we want to know, where did the money go? Well, I returned my time. Well, that should be enough to do everything with. And it doesn't work that way. That's not the way our church is financed.
You're right. So what advice would you share then with members and leaders who believe that we have reached the place where there is no need or benefit of having regional conferences, that we should just...
No, I ask you, is there a need for HBCUs?
Historical Black universities and colleges?
Yeah. Now, when they were built, I believe so. Built, we couldn't attend the University of Pennsylvania. We couldn't attend University of Virginia. We couldn't attend UCLA. we couldn't attend these other schools, but now we can. Why don't we close Howard University? Why don't we close Morehouse? Why don't we close our prestigious schools and universities? We don't need them anymore, do we? Now, if you were watching Dr. Henry Louis Gates' PBS documentary,
Church.
you know that, and back in the 90s, 90%, back in the 90s, 90% of all of our judges, our scientists, our doctors, our professors, our technicians graduated from an HBCU.
Yeah, you said it right, Elder.
Yes, graduated from one of them. But according to that documentary that just came out 2 weeks ago, much of that is still the same.
Yep.
So why don't we get rid of them? We don't need them anymore, right?
We need them.
And why are the percentages so high at those institutions? And I'll give you the answer.
Tell us.
Because they have a better delivery system. They have a better delivery. It's not getting into school, it's getting out of school. And those colleges and universities have a greater success of getting African American students through school. Now, do we need the regional conferences? And the answer I give is yes. And you say, why? Glad you asked. It's a better delivery system. See, most of the time, young people consider the church for one reason. What it does when I attend church between 10 o'clock and 2. That's why the church exists, so I can have a place to go on Saturday between 10 and 2.
You better
That's
preach,
not
Elder.
the purpose of the church.
You better preach. You better preach.
That's not the purpose of the church.
You better preach.
So before you reorganize the church, before you restructure the church, at least find out what is the reason why we have a church. What is the mission of the church? When Jan Paulson was the president of the World Church, he called a meeting at the General Conference in there on old Columbia Pike. The room was 2I-18, and he came in there to share with us a new initiative. It was one that they had just launched at the Spring Council of the General Conference, and it was called Union of Churches. And I sat there milling over it in my mind, Union of Churches. A union is a union of conferences. No, this was a union of churches. And so I raised my hand. I said, Dr. Paulson, what is the purpose of this new structure? He said, for self-determination and a seat at the world table. Now, why were they being created? They were being created because in the TED, the Trans-European Division, the immigrants that had come from Africa and India and other parts of the world were outnumbering the expatriates. I mean, they were outnumbering the individuals who were from those countries. So you had more people from Africa in France than you did people from France. You had more people from India in England than you in the church than you did people who were from the British Isles. But especially the Eastern European countries, Germany and Denmark and Norway. And what happens is that based on basic politics and all, the more people you have, the more voters you have. So the people who were from those parts of Europe could not get their agenda across the table. So they go to the church meeting, but they don't have a voice because they're outvoted in their own country. And so they came up with a proposal to give them self-determination so they can get their agenda across in the meeting. But in addition to that, a seat at the world table. Well, what does that mean? The General Conference is built on unions, not on local conferences. Representation at a General Conference session is by union. So in order to empower these unions of churches, they had to give them a seat at the world table, which meant that when these unions of churches came to a General Conference, that they had the ability to place individuals on the nominating committee of the World Church. And I said, wow, that sounds like a regional conference. But unfortunately, and I say it to you, so many of our millennials don't understand why and how the church is organized.
Well, Elder, truth be told, and now we have the great Pastor Joseph McCoy. You better listen to the prophet. We are listening to the prophet, Elder. We are listening to the prophet this evening. It's always good having you on, Doc, listening to our program. That is a major challenge for the church. There is a disconnect between three generations, three living generations. And we have placed emphasis on this type of programming for the next couple of weeks because we need to hear from you. We need to know the history of this movement and why we need to fight to keep this movement alive. And what you're sharing with us is just real hard facts that we just can't get around. And for our young people, the question that they're asking, Elder, is simply, when will they be in leadership?
Could you repeat that for me?
When will they be in leadership? That's a major question about regional conferences. When will young people be in leadership? Do you think they're ready for leadership? Are we grooming? Are we training? Where are we on that process? And I know it's not on your running sheet, but you are gifted and you have what God has placed for us to listen to. How do we transition this? How do we get this to fix the situation we're in?
Well, the first responsibility and role of leadership is to ensure mission. That's the purpose of the leader, to ensure that mission happens. The second most important thing that a leader can do is to prepare somebody to take their place. You take Jesus Christ. He made sure that mission happened. He said to his parents, "Would you not that I should be about my Father's business?" The disciples tried to discourage him from going to Jerusalem. But he had a date with destiny. Leaders make mission happen. But the second thing that Jesus did was to prepare others to take his place. And in order to do that, you have to empower them. God has all power. He is all power, all sovereign, and he gives it away. He's a sovereign God, and he gives power away. He says, your sons will prophesy and your daughters will have he empowers you. He told his disciples, you're going to do greater things than you've seen me do. That's the role of leaders, not to hoard power, not to hold on it tightly because somebody else may get what you have, but to give it away. And that has to be done very strategically. We cannot choose our successors, but we can prepare those who follow us. One of the things that leaders do is that leaders summons people to assembly and they set agendas. When Dan Jackson was our president, he and Alex Bryant and Tom Evans, and then later Randy, trying to remember, I can't call his name right now. He's gonna be upset with me. But anyway, they set the agenda. So you invite people to come, and then you set the agenda. But he did something else. They extended invitations to all of our university campuses to send representatives to our North American division year-end meeting. And he gave them both voice and vote. They weren't conference presidents. They were not institutional presidents. They were students. But if they were in student leadership on those college and university campuses, he invited them to come. Why? Because that's a way of preparing and empowering individuals for the future. You don't hoard power, you give it away. He could have invited them but said, you just watch and listen. Just be quiet and take notes. He didn't do that. He gave them voice. And more than that, he gave them a vote.
Awesome.
So we have to empower others. We have to give them a seat at the table. And if we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs.
We're not doing our jobs if we're not doing that. Yes, we have to give power, not hoard it. That's going to be a running theme around here, Elder. Elder, 2 more questions, and we're going to allow you to call it a night. Do you think, and this is a discussion that I have heard just recently, that the regional work should consider a credit union type of system where we finance our growth within the work? And I thought that was quite interesting. I have no real thought to that, but I think that is something that I would love to hear what you think about that.
Well, it's not really that new.
Oh, let's see. Well, it's not new. Help us, Elder.
Northeastern Conference had a credit union 40 years ago. 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
They had a credit union. Most of the unions operate a bank. Most of the unions operate a bank. That's how churches are built. Individuals, members in those unions, they have to be within their union, send money to the union bank, and they are paid interest on the loans that those unions make to local conferences and churches to build buildings or to acquire buildings at lower interest rates. And then the interest that they pay goes back into the pocket of the members who created the deposits. So now that may not be something for everybody, but certainly conferences who wish to do that certainly have a model, they have an example of how that's done. But there are many things that can be done with. When I was conference president, one of the things that I was very happy to try to promote was a system whereby when churches had tithe increases, I was asking myself one day on a flight, I'd just been flying back from someplace, and I was reading this article on revenue sharing. And I said, what motivation is there for a pastor to do his job and to ensure that his members are faithful in returning their tithe? Because only about 33% participate in the tithing system. You know that, right?
No, well, thank you.
Only about 33% participate.
Wow.
You have those who give a regular tithe, they return tithe every pay period. You have those who are intentional tithers. They will return a tithe every pay period as long as they're not on vacation or attending a workshop or a seminar someplace or a federation on the Sabbath of their pay period. And if they do, then you'll catch them next month.
Awesome.
And then there are those who are the occasional tithers. They give on the high Sabbaths of the month, of the year. Thanksgiving,
Easter,
Christmas, Easter, 4th of July. Now, the pastor knows that if the members are not faithful, that the entire church family suffers. So his job is really to encourage faithfulness, to move the intentional tithers to regular tithers and the occasional tithers to at least intentional tithers. But the motivation, what's the motivation? So we came up with a plan whereby we would return a bonus to the church and to the pastor, 10% of their tithe earned in non-tithe dollars. So if a church had a 10% increase, we would exchange the retained tithe of the conference with the general conference and receive non-tithe dollars, because you can't use tithe dollars for regular expenses. And then we would give back to the church. If they had $100,000, we would give back to the church $10,000 in non-tithe dollars. And we would give to the pastor $1,000. That's called revenue sharing. Now, in order to do that, our conference committee had to vote, but I was able to get their approval, and they did that, so that the pastor actually got a bonus for doing his job.
That's not a bad idea. I'm going to take that.
And the local church got a bonus.
I'm going to take that and write
for
that down
returning
right
what already belongs to the Lord.
now.
Now, there are a lot of creative things that, see, I'm not into these schemes and these run-of-the-mill Ponzi operate. I'm not into that. I don't believe in that, and I don't think any church or member should participate. But if you want to do the Lord's work, there are ways in order that you can bless. And there are those that have more ideas than I do, and far better ideas. But you need to be at the table, and you need to understand what is the operational function of the church.
So we need a real educational program to really teach about the nuances of the church and some of these gray areas that you are not exposed to as a young person or even a young adult until you are really engulfed in church. And that's usually when you're having children and you have a family, and now you're trying to grow them and groom them in the faith. So we may need to take note from this dialogue and start training our young people to understand the intimacy of this work and why it is important for us to keep it around. So, Elder, that is good food for thought. Last question. Outside of the devil, because he's blamed for everything, what would you say might be the greatest threat to the existence of the regional work? What advice would you give to us?
I would say that the two greatest threats are independence and congregationalism.
Wow. Man, you didn't wait to drop that on us this evening.
Our church is a great church. It's not a good church. It's a great church. The organization has its challenges, but it is an incredible organization. And we do ourselves a disfavor when we're constantly criticizing the church when we don't even understand the church. We denigrate the church. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be on that train. If that's where you're going, this is my stop. I'm getting off. Because this church has done an incredible amount of good. It hasn't done all that we could have done. People want us to do everything on the planet. We can't. Paul said, this one thing I do. Let's just get one thing right.
Hey!
Let's get one thing right. Christian education, we need to get back on that wagon. Christian education was one of our greatest accomplishments. But also in terms of the sharing. Now we share our tithe. We need to learn how to share our wealth.
Wow. Wow.
There are pockets of wealth within the church. Some are generous and some are not. We need to learn how to share our wealth. There was something that came up way back in the 40s, where the brethren decided that the strong would help the weak. That was before regional conferences were even organized. And they said that in conferences that have a low tithe per capita, that after the first $1.5 million, that they would share 1/2 of what, I think it was 1/2, 1.5% of their tithe would go into a pot, and they would share it with conferences that had low tithe per capita. So if you had a real wealthy conference, that it would take 1% after a certain amount of tithe, and they would share it. It was a tax that they gave themselves. Why? To help the poorer conferences. That's a revenue sharing approach. But when it's all about me, myself, and I, that's a road that's going down to perdition. God still blesses a cheerful giver. And carrying back in the day, the regional conferences came up with a plan for evangelism called Ebony Evangelism, where the stronger conferences reached into their pockets and sent their best evangelists into the other conferences to do evangelism so that we could grow the membership of those other conferences. That was a brilliant idea. And we sent evangelists out to Central States Conference. And we got their membership above the 10,000 membership mark. And we sent evangelists to Allegheny West and to the Southwest Regional Conference at our expense in order to grow their membership. Those are the kind of ideas. That's not being selfish and self-centered. That's about sharing our wealth, our talent, our ability. We're not in competition with one another. We're there to complete. Do you know why God did not give every person the same gifts? Have you ever thought about that? Why didn't God give everybody the same amount of gifts?
Share with us, Elder.
Because we're not in competition. We're here to help complete one another, not to compete with one another. Independence and congregationalism turns the attention on itself. It's about me. It ain't about you. Never been about you. It's not about me either. It's about us. We can make it. Back in the day, there was a group out of Washington, D.C., and they sing a song, we can make it together if we try.
Wow.
We can make it.
We must make it.
Yeah,
We
and
must.
you know, Martin King was right. Darkness can't drive out darkness.
That's right.
Darkness can't drive out
Cannot.
darkness.
Cannot.
Light has to do it. And Jesus said, you are the light of the world, a city set on the hill. Don't put your light. I think that's Matthew. I had the text here. Well,
Elder, you good. Just keep on preaching. We can find that passage later. Trust me. That is absolutely awesome. Dr. Kibble, I am truly honored this evening that you came on and you spoke from the heart, and you gave us food for thought. And I want to say thank you so much. If there's anyone who may want to just ask a very quick question from the panel, please do so right now before we say goodnight and we salute this man of God. Anyone? Or you just want to give a departing word at this time to the bishop?
Hey, Elder, this is Java here, man. Just want to say thank you for your years of service and thank you for your impact and influence on my life as a budding publishing director, and all the years that you provided leadership for the publishing family. I just want to say thank you, man. I love you, and it's great to see you.
well, I have great confidence in all of you. You're going to take this thing further than we could ever dream. It is going to happen. But don't accept for the ordinary. You continue to push the envelope. God will always bless those who are endeavoring to advance mission. So take it as far as you can. And when you need more help, then ask. If the Lord said, it shall be given. Not will, not could, not maybe. He'll make it happen.
Amen.
God bless each and every one of you.
Listen, I want to salute the one and only President, Vice President, a evangelist, a true leader, a Renaissance man, and most of all, truly, I believe, a man after God's own heart. Let's salute at this time, Pastor Alvin Kibble. We bless the Lord for you. We thank you for your work, your investment in the work. And sir, we're going to grab hold of your words this evening, and we are going to move this work further with energy, synergy, and with urgency. God bless you, Elder. We will bring you back. We look forward to an opportunity to glean from that wisdom pool that you have. God bless you. Have a happy Sabbath, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
Friday Night Live, this was another rich evening. And listen, guys, I mean, I am truly enjoying these moments with these great men. Over 100 years of ministry, guys. 100 years of ministry with that family impacting the work. What do you have to say, guys, before we say good night?
Man, listen, I just want to say this, that Elder Kibble dropped some knowledge on us today. My screen is over here for those of you watching, and I'm sitting there looking at this thing like, man, specifically in the area of him answering the question with the structures of the churches, man. The man broke it down and did live math.
Listen. And his numbers.
I know somebody was trying to figure out. They was saying, "Listen, man, where's the iPhone, man? Grab the calculator." And this man pulled out a pen and paper.
Hey, his numbers were correct, by the way. His numbers were correct. I think anyone else, before I give one or two excerpts from this this real powerful presentation. Anyone else?
I just know that he's gone to battle for us as a people.
Oh yeah.
And I mean that honestly, not just to create controversy, but to bring about the change that we're needed and the respect that's due to the regional conference and to all men. So I thank him for being a warrior and a leader for us.
Amen. Amen. Well, listen, I think one takeaway, and this may be a little bit rough, but I think he was called of God to deliver this one message to us. Stop belly aching and start reinvesting in our churches and in our infrastructures. That was very clear this evening, that we by far make more money than our parents and grandparents. We have more resources available at our fingertips, and usually we're leaving our churches to find something better. And this evening, he was very direct to us, with us, I should say. Reinvest in our infrastructures and in our conferences. And then this is, I think, so far, every one of these great leaders, they dealt with one major theme: education. Education. By far, that is a real pillar of the Black work: education. Are we still dedicated to education, to Christian education? And listen, if you keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again, something must register and something must resonate, that there must be some type of message God is trying to initiate inside of us. And so those are the two takeaways that I'm just grateful that the good doctor, laid very clear this evening: education, and let's reinvest in our conferences. And if you're going to reinvest, we have to hold people accountable. I do believe that. We must hold them accountable. As we prepare to leave, listen, guys, we have extended this historical diary, if you want to call it. I hope that at the end we will pull all of these interviews into one compiled document or series and have it available for anyone in the future to come and glean wisdom from some of the greatest warriors and leaders of the original work. And there are still 3 to 4 great leaders that we must have on so that they can share and make another deposit before we end this series. This series to me is life itself, because we have still with us history that can help shape the future. And that's why we're doing this, guys, because we do not want to lose sight of the past and walk in a different direction or take the wrong turn and end up on a different path, and we lose sight of what God has blessed us with. Listen, guys, love you, Friday Night Live. This was great again. Worship wherever your heart desires, as you have many virtual platforms to do so. I know that Lex will be in the Orlando area, correct? Go to sleep and get up, because you have to be here to set the place on fire. And by the way, guys, we haven't forgotten that we're going to return back to our resolutions. Just keep your diary, keep your log sheets or whatever you're recording with, because we will be back real soon to pick back up on that conversation